Welcome to building number 5 continued. It's time for more 3D printing adventures. You'll see here I have a lot of tread pads. I had 3D printed all of these out of ABS. They came out pretty good. I sanded them down a little bit. I figured out that because of some of the lifting that ABS wants to do on the bottoms, that I would print them upside down and just sand them flat. This one printed pretty well. It doesn't have very much lifting. It's pretty flat. I got some of them that came out really almost perfect, but I printed a lot of them upside down because then I could just sand it out, and it's going to be making contact with the ground and getting kind of scuffed up anyway, so I just thought that would work aesthetically, so I just did them all upside down and just popped the little supports out. And now I've moved on to printing the other half, which need to be printed in something rubbery and grippy. So I'm using TPU. It's very bendy. I'm printing it with 100% infill. It's surprisingly light and it has a real shine to it, and I know that'll eventually be worn down. And I watched a lot of videos on these printing with this filament before I started, and I had, because of all the homework I did, I had some pretty good results right up front, but I had a couple of mess ups. The tension on the filament is really important with TPU, and you can't print very fast. The filament itself is like rope. It's much more flexible and bendy and a little stretchy. So I'll put a couple of links to videos that I liked. They don't necessarily agree on everything, but between the 2 or 3 I watched, I basically got some pretty good results and benefited from very hard work, hours of research done by other people. The other thing I was surprised by the TPU is that it doesn't shrink the way I thought it might. Someone had reported to me that you have to account for shrinkage, but if I take this sample pad that I printed out of PLA at the very beginning, and I just kind of line this TPU one up with it, it is pretty much spot on size-wise. It's almost exactly the same. The main thing you need is for the pad to be able to fit with fasteners onto the link. This is a test link that I printed. It's not a real link. I just printed it so I could test these. I printed it in PLA. And these TPU ones fasten on just as good as the ABS ones. They fit pretty well. These aren't high precision parts. They're going to be just keeping some traction with the ground and getting pretty scuffed up and worn out, and the more scuffed up and worn out they look, the better they'll look. This purple guy is actually a jig. It's a fail. It got about 80% of the way through and I ran out of purple filament. It's a jig for actually trimming these links. If you get the stock Rex 821 chain, the corners have to be trimmed off and you have to drill holes. So this is a jig that Jason came up with that's good for trimming the stock material. I was printing these jigs for a friend and had this one fail, so I thought it would be neat to just set the link down in there, and that kind of tests the size of everything. So the sizes on these are all working out really well, and the ABS ones and the TPU ones are the right size. The other thing I've been working on is sanding these head pieces so that these detail plates will fit. I did have some warping on this ABS, so I had to work pretty diligently to get these plates to fit. What I found really worked well is one of these little jeweler's screwdrivers. This is the biggest one in my set, and I actually used it like a blade, and I went along these edges and just pushed into the filament, and it literally like would just gouge a layer of it off, and I could kind of more precision cut these openings for these detail plates. I thought that was just kind of a neat hack that people might find useful. I also used the screwdriver along here to flatten this out where the supports made it all bumpy. And I even took the detail plate itself and would like scrape it along the edge of it along here to flatten this out. It's been a lot of work. There's still, you can see there's places, gaps that need to be filled. And that's where this other stuff comes in. This particular headpiece has a big dip in it. I'm not sure what caused that. But I have got some silver gray putty, 2-part putty. This is standard old school model filler, and I figured on the spots like this right here, these spots, and this place here, and some of these deeper places where things shrunk, I could use some of this, and then in addition to some sanding, which I will try to do with my Dremel tool. I got a bunch of these sanding drums to get the big sanding done, and then I'll use little emery boards like this to really smooth it out. But then once I get some sanding done, I will probably find that my Rust-Oleum 2-in-1 automotive filler and primer will work pretty well. So a lot of printing is going pretty well, and now it's time for some real detail work. This piece printed beautifully. I didn't really get any warping on it. I got some sanding to do on it, but once I get some sanding done on all these pieces, these edge pieces that are meant to lock into each other, I should have a pretty good shell for Johnny Five's big head. And I've got to countersink these detail plates. They need to be countersunk. I find that Sin-Cut Sin does a beautiful job on the plates. The countersinking fee they have is, I think, a little bit high, so I'm going to see if I can get those countersunk on my own. So that's where I am now. Lots of really practical work that needs to be done on the very lowest part of Johnny Five, the treads, and the very toppest part, the head. So I'm going to start at the bottom and the top and maybe work my way into the middle. So making some progress.